I never imagined that the sound of laughter could hurt this much. That night, it poured out of the wedding tent like champagne bubbles. Bright, loud, and careless, my daughter was laughing in her white dress, under the soft glow of string lights, and I was standing outside, soaked to the bone, clutching a bouquet no one wanted me to hold. People always say weddings bring families together, but sometimes they show you just how far apart you've already drifted. My name is Linda Hayes. I'm 51 years old. I raised my daughter, Emily, mostly on my own after her father died, in a car accident when she was 16. For years, it was just the two of us. Late night takeout, shared secrets, whispered dreams. I used to think nothing could ever come between us. But love, I've learned, doesn't just vanish. It changes its shape. Sometimes it becomes pride, and sometimes it becomes distance. The night of her wedding, I wasn't even supposed to be there. Not really. Emily's fiancé, Ryan, had arranged everything, every flower, every seat, every speech. But not for me. My invitation arrived 2 weeks late, tucked in an envelope without handwriting, printed, cold. Still, I went. Because that's what mothers do. We show up, even when we're not wanted. The moment I stepped inside the tent, I felt it. The air thick with sweetness and secrets. Ryan was smiling too wide. Emily avoided my eyes. Their friends were strangers, in expensive shoes. It wasn't my world anymore. It was hers. And then came the moment. Emily was standing by the cake, perfect and glowing. Someone asked for a toast. I tried to stay quiet, but the silence felt heavier than my guilt. So I stood up, glass trembling in my hand, and I said the first thing that came to my heart. To Emily, I began. You've always been the bravest person I know. I hope you never forget where you came from, or the people who would do anything for you. The tent went quiet. I thought it was a kind thing to say, but Ryan's jaw tightened. Emily's smile faltered. Then, she leaned close and whispered something that still echoes in my chest. Mom, please stop. You're ruining this. Just go home. Those words, they didn't sound like my daughter's voice. They sounded like a stranger's. I left without saying another word. Outside, the night was cold, the sky swollen with rain. I walked through the parking lot barefoot, heels in my hand, mascara bleeding down my face. I didn't even notice when the bouquet slipped from my fingers and landed in a puddle. They said it was the happiest night of her life. For me, it was the loneliest. I thought that was the end of our story, that I'd go home, drown myself in old photos and regrets, and eventually fade from her perfect new life. But 3 days later, something arrived at my doorstep. A letter, cream-colored, no return address. But I knew that handwriting, like I knew my own breath. Mom, I'm sorry things got messy, but please, don't ruin my honeymoon too. For a while, I just stared at those words. Don't ruin my honeymoon. The arrogance, the assumption that I would, as if I hadn't already swallowed enough pain for her. As if I hadn't spent years protecting her from a world she didn't even understand. But the more I looked at that note, the more it felt wrong. Emily wasn't cruel. Not like that. There was fear in her handwriting, shaky, uneven, rushed. I'd seen that same tremor once before, when she was a teenager, hiding bruises after her first heartbreak. Something inside me whispered, she's not safe. I told myself I was overreacting, that it was just guilt playing tricks on me. But then I remembered the way Ryan's hand gripped her arm that night. How he whispered something in her ear that made her flinch. I remembered the missing guest, her father's old friend Mark, the one who always warned me to keep an eye on that boy. And I remembered the way Emily's eyes looked when she told me to leave, terrified. So, I made a decision, not out of anger, not even out of revenge, but out of something stronger, instinct. That night, I sat in my living room in Salem, Oregon, watching rain streak down the window like melted glass. I thought about the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, whispering, "Don't let the dark take me, Mom." And I realized the dark had taken her again, just not in the way I expected. I opened my laptop and searched the name of the resort they were supposed to stay at, a cabin on the Oregon coast near Lincoln City. I found their reservation, and beside it, a private number under emergency contact. My name wasn't listed, but his mother's was. That was enough. By dawn, my suitcase was packed. If she thought I ruined her wedding, she hadn't seen what I could do with her honeymoon. I wasn't going there to destroy her marriage. I was going there to find out what kind of marriage it really was. I drove through the rain, the highway cutting through fog like a silver blade. The closer I got to the coast, the heavier the air felt, like the ocean itself was holding its breath. I passed through towns I used to visit with her when she was little. Candy shops, motels, the old lighthouse where we carved our initials on the railing. Every mile hurt, every memory screamed. But I kept driving. By the time I reached the ocean, the sky had gone grey, the kind of grey that eats light whole. I parked near the cliffs, listening to the waves crash like thunder below. And for the first time in years, I spoke out loud, not to her, not to Ryan, but to the silence between us. "You think I ruined your wedding, Emily," I whispered. "But sweetheart, I saw something that night, and when you see what I saw..." I looked toward the cabin lights in the distance, two small glimmers against the storm. "You'll understand why I had to come, because sometimes a mother's love doesn't save you gently. Sometimes it burns everything that tried to destroy you, and I wasn't leaving that coast until I knew the truth. The smell of roses still makes me sick, not because I hate them. Emily used to love them, but because that scent will always take me back to her wedding day, the day everything I thought I knew about love started to rot. It was a Saturday in late June. The kind of warm Oregon afternoon where the air feels thick with sunlight and hope. I'd been up since dawn, curling my hair, steaming my pale blue dress, telling myself not to cry. I wanted to look like the mother of the bride, calm, proud, graceful, not like a woman who'd spent the last month wondering why her daughter barely spoke to her anymore. When I arrived at the venue, the parking lot was already packed. Big white tent, flower arch, champagne station. It was all picture perfect, almost too perfect, like a magazine layout. The coordinator at the entrance gave me a polite, practiced smile, the kind you give to someone you don't expect to stay long. "Guest name?" she asked. "Linda Hayes, mother of the bride." She hesitated before checking the list. That pause, half a second too long, told me everything. I wasn't on the original list. Ryan must have added me later. Inside, people milled about, sipping cocktails, and laughing like nothing bad could ever happen in a place so expensive. I searched for Emily, but all I saw were unfamiliar faces. When I finally found her near the mirror in the bridal suite, she froze like a deer caught in headlights. "Mom," she said, her voice soft but strained. "You came." Of course I did. I forced a smile. I wouldn't miss your big day. Her friends, all perfect hair and practiced sympathy, exchanged glances. Emily turned back to the mirror, pretending to fix her veil. "I just didn't know if you'd want to. After everything. That word hung in the air like smoke. We hadn't spoken properly since she told me she was marrying Ryan. She said I didn't understand him. Maybe she was right. I'd tried to. God knows I had. But something about that man felt off. His charm too rehearsed. His gaze too calculating. I remember standing behind her, watching her reflection. Her face looked older than 26, tired in a way makeup couldn't hide. "You look beautiful," I whispered. "Your dad would have been so proud." She smiled for a heartbeat, then blinked it away. "Let's not talk about Dad today." The words hit harder than she meant them to. I just nodded. "Okay." a knock came on the door. Ryan stepped in, even though tradition said he shouldn't see the bride before the ceremony. "You ready, Em?" he asked, voice smooth. A salesman's smile plastered on his face. Then his eyes flicked to me, cold and assessing. "Oh, Mrs. Hayes, didn't expect you back here." Something about the way he said back here made my stomach twist. Emily rushed to him, almost defensively. "Ryan, it's fine." He put a hand on her shoulder. Not gently, not rough, but possessive. That single gesture told me more than words ever could. "See you at the altar," he said, brushing past me. His cologne lingered after he left. Cedarwood and control. When the ceremony started, I sat in the third row, next to an empty chair labeled reserved. That seat was supposed to be for Mark, my late husband's best friend, the man who'd helped me raise Emily after the accident. He'd called me the night before, saying he had something urgent to tell me about Ryan, but he never showed. Later, I'd learn why. As Emily walked down the aisle, I tried to focus on her smile, but my eyes kept drifting to Ryan's. He wasn't watching her. He was watching me, smirking, like he knew something I didn't. They said their vows, the usual promises about forever. And when it was time to exchange rings, Ryan's hand trembled, not with emotion, but with tension. His eyes darted toward a man standing near the back, someone tall, wearing a black suit and dark glasses. The man nodded once, subtle but deliberate. Ryan relaxed instantly. That's when I knew something was wrong. The reception blurred together. Speeches, laughter, music that felt too loud. I kept searching for that man in the black suit, but he'd disappeared. When I finally caught Emily alone near the dessert table, I tried to ask if everything was okay. She stiffened. "Mom, please, not tonight. I just want to make sure you're happy." "I am." She forced a laugh. "You always think something's wrong." Because something was wrong. Her hand had a faint bruise under the makeup, like someone had grabbed her wrist too hard. Before I could say anything else, Ryan joined us. "Everything good here, ladies?" he asked, voice sugar sweet, but eyes sharp. Emily nodded quickly, her smile frozen. "Perfect." He leaned close to her ear and whispered something I couldn't hear. She nodded again, like a child caught doing something bad. Then she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said the words that would haunt me forever. "Mom, please just go. You're ruining this." Everyone around us pretended not to notice. But I could feel the stares, the whispers. I put down my glass, swallowed the lump in my throat, and walked out before the first dance. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. I looked back once, through the tent window, and saw Ryan's arm wrapped around her waist, his lips against her ear, his eyes on me, and in that single glance, I saw everything: control, possession, fear. I didn't know the full story yet, but I knew enough to understand one thing. My daughter wasn't safe. When I drove away that night, the rain started falling hard, drumming on the roof like warning knocks. I gripped the steering wheel and promised myself I'd let her live her own life, even if it broke me. But that promise didn't last long, because the next morning I found a voicemail on my phone from Mark. His voice was shaky, panicked. "Linda, you were right about him. There's something you need to see. Don't trust." The message cut off mid-sentence. No name, no address, just static. That was the last time anyone ever heard from Mark. And now, sitting in my car, outside that lonely cabin by the coast, rain hammering the windshield, I finally understand what he was trying to tell me. Ryan wasn't just hiding something. He was hiding someone. And before this honeymoon is over, I'll find out who. The Oregon coast has a way of swallowing sound. Even the wind moves differently there. Not howling, just breathing. That night, as I parked my car half a mile from the cabin, I could hear the ocean crashing against the cliffs, like a secret being kept too long. The honeymoon cottage sat at the end of a gravel road, tucked behind a line of cedar trees. Its windows glowed faintly through the rain, soft amber light against the dark. A perfect postcard scene. If you didn't know what was inside. I stepped out quietly, pulling my coat tighter. The air smelled of salt and pine. My shoes sank into mud as I moved closer through the trees. It felt wrong, sneaking on my own daughter. But something deeper than guilt pushed me forward. A mother knows when something's off, and nothing about that lighted cabin felt like safety. Through the window, I could see them. Emily and Ryan. She sat at the small kitchen table, her hands around a mug, her eyes distant. He was talking, pacing, animated in a way that looked more like control than charm. Every time she tried to speak, he'd cut her off with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Then, he set his phone on the counter, face down. That's when I saw it. A black phone, not the one he used at the wedding. I knew because his real one had a gold case. This one didn't. A second phone. He kissed her on the head, said something I couldn't hear, and walked toward the back of the cabin. Emily stayed still for a long moment. Then she reached for the phone. Quick, nervous. But before she could touch it, he came back. She froze, pretended to sip her tea, and he smiled again. That same smile I'd seen the night of the wedding. The kind that hides a warning. I felt my pulse thudding in my ears. I needed proof. Not feelings. Not suspicions. Proof. I circled around the cabin, keeping to the shadows. The back door was slightly open. Maybe for air, maybe carelessness. Either way, I took it as a sign. The wind covered the sound of my steps as I moved inside, staying behind the hall corner. The cabin was small. Kitchen, living room, one bedroom. Their voices drifted in from the other side of the wall. Ryan, can we not do this now? Emily's voice trembled. I do what? He asked, tone flat. This? You keeping things from me? I'm not keeping anything. Then why did Mark call you the night before the wedding? I stopped breathing. Mark! Ryan's reply was instant, sharp. Don't say that name again. Emily didn't respond. The silence that followed was louder than their argument. Then came the sound of a chair scraping the floor. Footsteps. A door slamming. She'd gone into the bedroom. He muttered something low and angry, then grabbed his coat and left through the front door. The slam rattled the windows. I stayed still until his car engine faded into the distance. Only then did I step out from the hall. The cabin was dim, lit by one lamp and the flicker of the fireplace. On the counter lay his second phone. Black, screen cracked. I picked it up, half expecting it to be locked. It wasn't. A list of messages filled the screen. Most were deleted, but one remained. A single text from an unknown number, dated the morning of the wedding. We handled Mark. He won't interfere again. My stomach turned to ice. I stared at the words until they blurred. Handled. That's what people say when they're talking about a problem, not a person. I saved the message by photographing it with my own phone. My hands were shaking. Ryan had something to do with Mark's disappearance. Maybe worse. But before I could think, I heard movement from the bedroom. Emily's voice, soft and broken. Mom! I froze. She'd seen my shadow. Her eyes widened as she stepped into the light. Red eyes, tear-streaked face. For a second, she didn't look like a bride or even an adult. She looked like my little girl again. Scared and small. Mom, what are you doing here? She whispered. I wanted to run to her, to hold her, but fear held me back. I needed to see you, to make sure you're okay. You shouldn't be here. Ryan isn't who you think he is, I said. My voice cracked on the last word. I found something. Emily, her head snapped toward the door. He's coming back. I followed her gaze. Headlights cutting through the rain. She grabbed my hand, trembling. You have to go. Please, if he finds you. Emily, listen to me. But it was too late. The sound of the car door slammed outside, boots crunching gravel. I looked at her, at the panic in her eyes, and understood everything without her saying it. She wasn't angry with me that night at the wedding. She was terrified. She told me to leave because she thought he might hurt me, and now she was trying to protect me again. I slipped out the back door, just as Ryan stepped in through the front. From outside, I could hear his voice, low, suspicious. "Who are you talking to?" "No one," Emily answered quickly. The lie in her tone broke my heart. I moved through the trees, back toward my car, rain soaking through my clothes. My hands were cold, but my mind was burning. I had proof now, a message that tied Ryan to Mark's disappearance. But I also knew something else. Emily wouldn't leave him unless she saw the truth for herself. And that meant I couldn't stop now. As I sat in my car, I watched the cabin lights flicker through the rain. My reflection stared back at me in the windshield. Tired eyes, wet hair, and something new behind the sadness. Resolve? I whispered into the dark. "You wanted to see how I could ruin your honeymoon, Ryan. You're about to find out, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about saving my daughter, even if it meant becoming the monster he already thought I was." I didn't sleep that night. The rain never stopped, and neither did my thoughts. I sat in my car until dawn, watching the ocean crash against the cliffs in the distance. Every time lightning split the sky, I saw their cabin for a brief second, like a flash from another life. When morning came, I drove into town. The nearest cafe was a small roadside diner with chipped red booths and the smell of burnt coffee. The waitress, a woman about my age, looked at me the way strangers sometimes do, like they sense something broken, but don't ask. I ordered black coffee and opened my phone. The photo of that message stared back at me. "We handled Mark. He won't interfere again." The timestamp was 6:47 a.m., the morning of the wedding. Mark had been Ryan's best friend. At least that's what everyone believed. He was also Emily's ex-boyfriend from college, the one who'd introduced her to Ryan in the first place. 2 weeks before the wedding, Mark went missing. The police called it voluntary disappearance. No struggle, no signs of foul play. But I remembered the last time I'd seen him. He looked scared. I sipped the coffee and opened Facebook, scrolling through old posts until I found Mark's profile. The last update he'd made was a photo of him at a marina, holding a fishing rod and smiling. Behind him, a black SUV, the same model Ryan drove. My heart thudded. I left the cafe and drove toward the local police station. It was small, barely more than 2 rooms. But I wasn't here to file a report. I just needed information. The officer at the desk looked up from his computer. "Morning, ma'am. Can I help you?" "I was wondering if you ever found a man named Mark Henson," I said. He typed the name. "Went missing out of Portland last month, right?" I nodded. He frowned. "Still open. Coast Guard found some debris near Lincoln Bay, but nothing conclusive." "Debris?" "Fishing gear. Maybe his boat capsized. Or maybe someone wanted it to look that way," I said quietly. The officer looked at me for a moment, then leaned back. "You a relative?" "No," I lied. "Just someone who thinks he didn't disappear by choice." When I walked back outside, the wind had picked up, cold and sharp. I could feel the truth getting closer, and it scared me. That evening, I drove back toward the cabin, but stayed hidden at a distance. Through the binoculars I'd bought that morning, I could see Emily on the porch, sitting alone, staring at the ocean. Ryan was nowhere in sight. I texted her. "I know you're scared. Please trust me." For a minute, nothing. Then 3 dots appeared. "He's leaving for town tomorrow. Come then." My chest tightened. She was ready. I waited until he drove away the next morning before approaching the cabin again. Emily opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but her voice was steady. "Mom, you shouldn't be doing this." I told you, I'm not leaving until you're safe. She motioned me inside. The cabin was quieter than I expected. No music, no laughter, just the sound of the sea through the window. Ryan's been getting calls, she said. Private numbers. He steps outside to answer. Last night, he came back angry. He said Mark's name again. He told me Mark tried to ruin everything. I handed her my phone and showed her the photo of the message. She covered her mouth. Mom, what is this? Proof, I whispered. He's hiding something. Her hands trembled. But what can we do? He said if I ever... She stopped. If you ever what? Her voice dropped to a whisper. If I ever betrayed him, he'd make sure I regretted it. My blood ran cold. Emily, listen to me. We're leaving tonight. Pack what you can. She nodded slowly, like a child waking from a bad dream. We began moving quietly, gathering her things, her purse, her phone. She hesitated by the wedding photo on the mantel. He looked so kind that day, she said softly. Monsters always do, I replied. I went to check outside. The air was foggy, ocean mist drifting through the trees. Then, headlights, Ryan's car. Emily, I hissed, running back inside. He's here, she froze, panic flashing in her eyes. He said he'd be gone till dinner, she whispered. Go to the bedroom, I said. I locked the door. She didn't move. Mom, no! Now, she obeyed. I stood near the door, my pulse pounding. The handle turned slowly. Then the door opened. Ryan stepped inside, soaked from the rain, carrying a small box. His eyes narrowed the second he saw my coat draped over the chair. Linda, he said, voice calm. Too calm. I thought you'd left town. I forced a smile. I thought I'd surprise you. He tilted his head, smirking. You've been busy, haven't you? My throat tightened. Where were you? Doing business, he said, setting the box down. You know how it is. Some things just need to be handled. The word hit me like ice. Handled. He took a step closer. You shouldn't be here, Linda. This is our honeymoon. I could feel the weight of his gaze, cold and deliberate. I came to see my daughter, I said quietly. He smiled, but his eyes didn't. Your daughter is fine. Then his tone dropped lower. But you never know when to stop interfering, do you? Behind the bedroom door, I heard a faint creak. Emily's frightened breath. I stayed still. My heart was hammering so hard it hurt. Maybe I should call the police, I said. Tell them about Mark. That smile vanished. You don't know what you're talking about. I think I do. We stood there, silence stretching like a wire ready to snap. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it. The black one, same as before. And his expression changed. Something like panic flickered for just a second before he shoved it back in his pocket. I took the chance. I'll be in touch, I said. Turning toward the door, Linda, he called out softly. If you go to the police, you'll regret it. I didn't answer. I just walked out, rain hitting my face like needles, heart pounding. When I reached my car, my hands were trembling so badly. I could barely hold the steering wheel. Through the windshield, I saw him watching from the window, motionless, dark silhouette, framed by the light behind him. For the first time in years, I was truly afraid, but fear wasn't going to stop me anymore, because I finally understood what Ryan was capable of. And now, I knew exactly what I had to do. By the time I reached my motel, the rain had turned into a storm. Wind rattled the thin windows, and thunder rolled across the ocean like a warning. I sat on the edge of the bed, soaked, shaking, not from the cold, but from the truth sitting heavy in my chest. Ryan wasn't just dangerous. He was deliberate, calculated, and my daughter was trapped with him. I needed proof, not just whispers, not just suspicion, something undeniable. I stared at the photo on my phone again. The text message, the timestamp, the name, Mark. That one line was enough to raise questions. but not enough to destroy a man like Ryan. I needed the rest of the story, so I started digging. There was an old laptop in the motel's lobby for guests. It barely worked, but the Wi-Fi did. I searched for Ryan Hale, business, Oregon. Dozens of links appeared. Construction deals, property developments, even charity events. He looked clean. Too clean. Then buried 3 pages deep, I found it. A small news article from 2 years ago. Local contractor under investigation for insurance fraud. After fire destroys development site. Case dismissed due to lack of evidence. The name listed? Ryan Hale. My stomach turned. Insurance fraud. Fire. Handled. It fit. I leaned back, my hands trembling. The more I read, the more I realized. Ryan wasn't a man who got lucky. He was a man who erased problems, people, paper trails, evidence, and my daughter had married him. The next morning, I called a name I hadn't spoken in years. Detective Simon Briggs, a family friend from Portland PD, who owed me a favor, Linda Carter. His voice was warm but cautious. It's been a long time. It's Hayes now, I said softly, and I need your help. He listened as I told him everything. The wedding, the message, the missing man. When I finished, there was a long silence. Ryan Hale, he said finally. Yeah, that name crossed my desk before. Not for murder, but close enough. What do you mean? People around him go missing. Business partners, rivals. He's careful, smart, never leaves a mark. My throat tightened. Can you find something? Anything? I can try, Simon said. But if you're right, you need to stay far away from him. I can't, I said. Not until Emily's safe, he sighed. Then let me get you something solid. Give me a day. That night I didn't sleep again. The ocean kept roaring, and every sound made me flinch. I thought about Emily, how she looked at him during the wedding, all that blind love and trust. And I thought about myself. Maybe I had been too harsh that day, when I told her he wasn't the man she thought. Maybe that's why she'd screamed that I'd ruined her wedding. Maybe that's why she'd turned away from me. But she didn't know. She couldn't see the danger that hid behind his smile. I watched the rain hit the motel window and whispered, I'll fix it, Emily, even if it kills me. The next morning, Simon called. Linda, he said, his tone different this time. Tight, urgent. You were right. I found something. What is it? There's a property Ryan bought 3 months ago. Remote cabin near Lincoln Bay. The deed lists his name, but the seller, Mark Henson. My heart stopped. Mark sold it to him? That's what the record says. Except, the signature was dated 2 weeks after Mark disappeared. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. You're saying Ryan forged it? Looks that way. And Linda, he hesitated. There's more. I cross-checked his financials. He claimed an insurance payout on the property the day after Mark vanished. I couldn't breathe. That cabin, the honeymoon cabin, was built on blood money. Simon's voice lowered. If you want to end this, I can help. But you'll have to get him to confess. I need a recording. Something solid. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the motel mirror. My hair was tangled, my eyes hollow. But I saw something else too. A strength I hadn't seen in years. If he wanted to play games, I'd play better. Not with violence, not with fear, with truth. That afternoon, I drove back to the cabin. The storm had cleared, leaving a strange calm behind. When I reached the road, Ryan's car was gone. Emily stood on the porch, eyes wide when she saw me. Mom, he's been acting strange, she said. He keeps getting calls from some blocked number. He leaves for hours. This is our chance, I told her. We're ending this. I set my phone on record and tucked it in my coat pocket. Just talk to him, I said. Ask him about Mark. I'll handle the rest. She hesitated. Mom, what if he finds out? He will, I said. That's the point. When Ryan came back that evening, the sky was pink with sunset. He looked relaxed, maybe even smug. Back again, Linda, he said, smiling. Can't get enough of us. I stayed calm. We need to talk. About what? About Mark Henson. The smile vanished. I told you to stop digging. I can't, I said. Not when I know you killed him. He laughed, sharp, cold. That's a big accusation. I have proof. He tilted his head. Do you? Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling. Ryan, did you hurt him? For a second, his expression softened, then hardened again. He was in the way, he said quietly. He tried to ruin what we built. I couldn't let that happen. The air froze. Ryan, I said slowly, do you even hear yourself? He turned to me. You think you're protecting her, but you're not. You're ruining her life. Again. He took a step closer. You can't prove anything. And then, like fate, his phone buzzed. He looked down, same black phone, and answered. Yes, it's done. She suspects nothing. I didn't need to say a word. The recorder in my pocket caught everything. When he hung up, I smiled for the first time. You just did. His eyes widened. What? I have everything I need, I whispered. And tomorrow everyone will too. I turned toward the door. Emily followed me. Ryan shouted after us, his voice breaking. You don't know what you're doing. But I did. For the first time, I knew exactly what I was doing. That night, I sent the recording to Simon. By morning, there would be no going back. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Cold, trembling, but real. Because revenge, I realized, wasn't about destroying someone. It was about finally being believed. The morning felt too calm, almost wrong, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to end. I watched the sun rise from the motel window, streaks of gold cutting through the ocean fog. For the first time in days, the rain had stopped. But inside me, the storm hadn't. My phone buzzed. A text from Simon. Got it. Stay put. They'll take it from here. He meant the police. They had the recording now. Ryan's voice confessing, cold and casual. It was over. At least that's what I wanted to believe. By mid-morning, I drove back toward the cabin one last time. The road was quiet. The sea to my left grey and endless. I didn't know why I was going back. Maybe to see it end. Maybe to finally let it go. When I pulled up, 2 police cruisers were already there. Emily stood outside, arms wrapped around herself, hair whipping in the wind. She looked smaller somehow, like a child again. Her eyes met mine, and she ran straight into my arms. He's gone, Mom, she whispered. They took him. I held her tight, my heart breaking and healing all at once. Good, I said softly. It's finally done. She started crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears that soaked into my shoulder. I didn't believe you. I said awful things. I thought you were jealous or controlling. I didn't see what he was. I stroked her hair. You weren't supposed to. Love makes us blind, Emily. It's not your fault. We stood there for a long time, 2 women surrounded by wind and silence. Then I looked toward the cabin. Through the window, I could see officers moving around inside. One of them holding Ryan's phone in a plastic bag. I wondered how many lies it held, how many lives it ruined. He'd said once, during the wedding rehearsal, I don't lose, Mrs. Hayes. But he'd lost now. Not because I fought harder, but because I stopped being afraid. A week later, I sat on my porch back home in Portland. The lake outside was still and silver, catching the last light of evening. Emily was staying with me again. She hadn't said much since we came back, but that was okay. Sometimes healing starts with silence. She came outside carrying 2 cups of coffee. Still taking it black, huh? I smiled faintly. Some habits never change. We sat together, watching the reflection of the sky in the water. Mom, she said quietly. They found Mark's car, near the cliffs. His brother came by the station to thank you. I closed my eyes. Thank me. I whispered. For what? For not letting Ryan get away with it. I didn't answer, because I didn't do it for justice or gratitude. I did it because that man took my daughter's trust, and I wasn't going to let him take her life too. Later that night, when Emily went to bed, I walked down to the lake. The air smelled like pine and rain. The moon floated pale above the water, soft and steady. I thought about everything that had happened. The wedding, the accusations, the fear, the lies. And then, the moment she screamed that I'd ruined her wedding, she was right. I had ruined it. But I ruined it to save her. I crouched down and touched the surface of the lake, watching ripples spread across the reflection of the moon. I ruined your wedding, Emily, I whispered, so you could have a life. A life where she could breathe again. A life where she could trust again. A life without him. A soft sound broke the silence. Footsteps behind me. Couldn't sleep either. Emily's voice was gentle now. I smiled. Guess it runs in the family. She stood beside me, arms folded, staring at the water. I had dreams about him, she said, about how it all ended. But when I wake up, I don't feel hate. I just feel sad. That's good, I said. Hate keeps you stuck. Sadness lets you go. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You were right about him. About everything. I exhaled slowly. No, honey. I was just a mother who couldn't stop caring. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The night was quiet. Just wind, crickets, and the heartbeat of the lake. Then she looked at me. Mom. Yeah? Do you ever regret it? I smiled faintly. Ruining her honeymoon? She gave a soft, tired laugh. Yeah. I looked at the water again, at the shimmering reflection of two women standing side by side. One older, one stronger, both scarred, but still here. No, I said. Not for a second. A week later, a letter came in the mail. It was from Simon. Inside was a copy of the case summary. Ryan's confession, the evidence, the charges. At the bottom was a handwritten note. You were right. Truth always wins. Eventually, I folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer beside my bed. That night, I dreamed of the ocean again, but this time, the water wasn't dark or violent. It was calm, clear, free. And when I woke up, I realized something. Revenge hadn't set me free. Forgiveness had. Not forgiveness for him, but for myself, for doubting my instincts, for breaking my daughter's heart to protect her, for carrying guilt that was never mine to bear. I poured a cup of coffee and stepped outside. The morning light touched everything golden. The trees, the lake, the empty chair across from me. Emily would be up soon. She'd start again. We both would, because sometimes the only way to heal a wound that deep is to walk through the pain, not around it. I looked out across the lake and whispered the words that had been waiting on my tongue for months. It's over. The wind carried the sound away, soft and final. And for the first time since that terrible wedding day, I felt peace. My daughter said I ruined her wedding. Maybe I did, but in the end, I saved her life. And sometimes, that's the only kind of love a mother can give.